We want to remind everyone we have social media exclusive content like our 2-minute drill as well as other video content. To find that, please make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok for more. We are kicking off our season finale, episode 16 on the Let's Be Frank video podcast. I'm your host, Jason Duhe. I'll shortly be joined by head coach Frank Monica. And we got a great show for you tonight. We're going to wrap up the high school football season. We're going to preview some bowl games, talk some Saints, and we're going to have special guest Reggie Reginelli joining us. But before we do that, we want to go ahead and thank our title sponsor, Picardo and Duhe Law Firms, your go-to River Parish lawyers. So, Coach, we're going to go ahead and bring you on. Before we go ahead and start talking about some of these high school games, of course, the season ends in the Dome as always, and we know there's a lot of teams hoisting the trophy. But, you know, Coach, you've kind of been on both ends of that. For the team that loses, what would be your message to those coaches and those programs for picking yourself up and moving on, and how to build off of the momentum that you created in this season?
Well, once you get there, you know, it's an honor to be there, but, you know, you just don't want to be there. You want to get there and play well. And if you come up short, you play well and you come up short, and then that's something you could build on during the off season. On the flip side of it, sometimes it doesn't matter what's at stake. You know, the stakes could be tremendously high. Even in Super Bowls, teams come in and they really don't play well. And that might be a byproduct of intense, maybe semifinal round, quarterfinal round. That happens over time. And if you look at, and I really think that's happened even this past year. I've seen it happen in the World Series. I've seen it happen in the Super Bowl, where maybe the favorite didn't play up to par for whatever the reason, because you still have to be motivated. And more importantly, your team must be emotionally prepared. And sometimes all that emotion can be used up during the season, or like in high school during the playoff run to get to the Superdome. And then when you get there, you say, well, I'm proud to be here, but it's more than just getting here. You got to finish the job. And I think a lot of guys get to that point, they either emotionally drained or they got caught up in the moment and forgot to prepare well. But that's not the case for what I saw. I just saw a couple of teams that just really had burned up a lot of their energy in the semifinals and quarterfinals.
And, you know, Coach, with the new system in place, we had a ton of great games. And I do think that definitely, you know, may have played in some of these matchups. But when you look at, go ahead and start out with Division 4, and we'll go Division 3, 2, and 1. In our first game we're going to talk about was Oak Grove taking down Haynesville 62-36, one of the only bigger margins that you'll see. One thing to note is Haynesville kind of had guys going both ways, and it might have caught up to them in the end. But Oak Grove set a record, the most rushing yards in state title history. So a heck of a game for them, and they add on to their winning tradition.
Can you imagine? I mean, this is almost identical to the season game. When Oak Grove actually dominated that ball game also. Can you imagine 98 points, almost 100 points in that game? I don't know if Vegas has a triple digit as far as an over and under, but Oak Grove has always been there in the past. They've won a number of championships. So does Haynesville, but they were just a lot more powerful, and the quarterback took over the ball game. So I think that the game came out as expected.
In our next matchup, we had Southern Lab taking down Riverside 42-35. First of three River Parish teams we'll talk about, Coach, none of which were able to take home the gold medal. But in this matchup, it felt like Riverside had the momentum at certain points in the game, but you have to credit Southern Lab, a very talented ball club, and they just proved to be a little bit too much in the end, and a late touchdown drive for Southern Lab really sealed the deal.
It was a game of momentums and big plays. You know, there was a turnover here or there and a couple of big turnovers that ended up hurting Riverside. But, you know, just the fact that Riverside was on the field and made it that close was a tribute to that program, such a young team, and Coach Lee Roussel, what he did. But Southern Lab used some big plays to get right back in the ball game. Riverside jumped off the 14-point lead. A couple of times their tight end was left completely wide open right down the middle of the field. And whether the busted coverage, I think it was the design of the play that coaches came up with that really, it was an unbalanced look. And I don't know if they ever picked up the tight end. But all in all, it was a great win for Southern Lab because they came back at the end and to overtake Riverside. But Coach Roussel has nothing to be ashamed of because they certainly fought their hearts out.
And we've talked about it already. We know the job that Coach Roussel's done over there at Riverside. And I think you'll continue to see them build upon the success they had this season. Looking at Division 3, we had the non-select matchup, Union Parish taking down St. James 36-35 in that game. Coach, this is a situation we've discussed coming up not only last season. We had this debate and discussion about the end of a game. Do you go for two in that situation? And a lot of the playoffs have had this too. Union Parish rolls the dice, comes up with a 2-point conversion, and unfortunately sends St. James packing in that ball game. But a very hard-fought game between two physical ball clubs, and we knew that would be the case.
Well, I tell you, one of the reasons that they went for it, they had kicking issues the whole game and the whole year. So you kind of knew that they were going to do that. And let me say this, Coach Spatafora, he's also has one of the best powerlifting programs in the state. And people don't realize that he makes most of his football players powerlift. And when you go to the powerlifting meet, you see his football team there, and you can tell the difference. And when they went for it, they got the power I formation, and they ran the ball against St. James. And you kind of knew that was going to take place, and to stop them in 3 yards, they were going to put their whole season on that one particular play, and the guy just actually walked in. But give Coach Davis a lot of credit for St. James. No one thought that he'd be there beginning of the year. There was a lot of new faces on that team, and they'll be back because he's certainly got their attention.
Yeah, Union Parish, formerly Farmerville, when we played them, Coach, definitely always makes the all off the bus team. Definitely a very intimidating group when they get off the bus. And again, nothing's changed in that program. And again, a nice win for that program. But moving on to our next matchup, we had Calvary Baptist beating St. Charles 34-28. And we kind of discussed this game, Coach, and it came down to a few decisions late. St. Charles misses a field goal and goes for it on 4th down with the lead, and Calvary drives on the field with no timeouts. And that's not something you're going to see often from a St. Charles team. And you have to feel for the program and the kids because they had a commanding lead late in the game, but you have to credit Calvary. They came out and they executed late in that game and took hold of the momentum, and it was a nice win for them. Right
after the missed field goal, I want you to know the field goal hit the upright. I mean, it wasn't like he missed it; it hit the upright, and Calvary responded with an 80-yard drive, and they went tempo on St. Charles, and I think that tempo kind of wore them down a little bit. And then St. Charles gets the ball back, and as everybody knows, they actually ran a little speed play with one of the wide receivers. He actually ran out of bounds. Had he stayed in bounds, that'd have been another 40 seconds off the clock right there. And but what can you say? They got the ball on the 50-yard line, and would you have gone for it? Coach Stein and Coach Monica, they've done that all year long. So that's nothing new. I don't think anybody should be surprised that they did that. But then they took the ball with no timeouts left and 44 seconds left on the clock, and they scored. So Calvary continued to compete in the ball game. Unfortunately for St. Charles, phenomenal run, won 20 in a row, but they'll be back. They'll be back. They have a great program, and they'll be back.
And not to mention they're going to be moving up in division again next year, so that'll be an interesting move to see St. Charles playing in Division II next year. Moving on to Division II. In what we discussed as being one of the most, if not the most open wide bracket, is the select side Division II. Opelousas defeating Cecilia 26-13. I think that further proves the point, Coach. The lowest seed in the championship games won it and took home the state title. And Cecilia's been a very consistent program all year, but Opelousas came out and it was their day.
Well, Opelousas, this has been a team, from what I understand, since junior high. They had a bunch of real big linemen, and they all came up together, and people saw this coming. As ninth graders that did well, they got deep in the playoffs last year, and they're all coming back. And most of them are coming back for next year, so they are grinded out type of power football team, and they can get a team that's more finesse oriented and keep them off the field because they're going to get their 4 or 5 yards of push. And that's what happened in this ball game. And they negated a real explosive Cecilia offense by keeping them off the field. So credit to them, and it looks like they'll be back again next year.
All right, in our next matchup, we had St. Thomas More in the rematch, defeating Lafayette Christian 35-21. Coach, St. Thomas More, when you talk about the big boys in the state and some of the premier programs, St. Thomas More is right there in the conversation and arguably one of, if not the best program in the state at the moment. They've been very dominant, again, defeating Lafayette Christian again, and they just continue to prove why they are a force to be reckoned with.
But this game is really not indicative of the score, not indicative of how the game went. Lafayette Christian dominated the first half. They were up 14-0. When the score was 14-7, And there was a lot of mistakes that they ended up making when the score was 14-7. There were 2 seconds left to go in the half. And for some reason, the quarterback throws it, and he's a great quarterback, but he throws the pass. He didn't try to reach the end zone. It was a shorter pass that he threw in the deep flat, and the guy picked it and went all the way for a touchdown. It was a pick six. To me, that turned the whole momentum of the game around. Rather than going in 14-7 at halftime, I don't know what they were trying to accomplish with just 2 seconds left. You think they were, well, let's just get out of the ball game because you couldn't reach the end zone. The ball's on the minus 40-yard line. And but that kind of set a precedent. After that, they had some big penalties in there that set them back. And they had also a couple injury, and they had a guy ejected in the game, one of their better players. So I think that really had a big effect on the outcome of this ball game. But credit St. Thomas more. They have a very, very fine program. They're methodical in what they do. They know what they're doing. But really, Lafayette Christian had a little bit more speed on the field than did for a half. But then I think the pounding finally took care of the game late. Actually, St. Thomas More did not run them off the field with the pass. It was the run. They actually ran the football against them late in the game that back that went over 150 yards for them. And so that was a big, big difference in the game. It was not the pass, it was the run.
Thanks, Coach. And looking at Division I, we had Ruston defeating Zachary 31-17. Talk about one of the dominant forces in the state. It has to be Zachary. Ruston has kind of been playing second fiddle for quite a few years, and again came up on the short end last year in the Dome. This year they finally get the job done, and again, hats off to that program and be able to capture that state title, the first, I believe, since I think it was 1990. So it's been a while for them.
Ruston, Zach was not the same. Zach was over. Their skill was great. It just didn't have the big beef up front that they normally have, but Ruston did. And Ruston dominated the game. The game was not even that close. They dominated the game with their big linemen on both sides of the football. And so it's not a surprise. I talked to a couple of coaches that had played Ruston last year. And they said, well, Ruston's going to be the team to beat this year. And they certainly were. And they deserved to be the champions this year.
Thanks, Coach. In our final matchup, we had Catholic of Baton Rouge defeating Acadiana 55-31. Coach, a little bit of a shock. I got to watch that Acadiana team play just a week ago against a very talented Carr football team. And Catholic had played a great game and had their way with Acadiana, and hats off to them for winning the title yet again.
Catholic High dodged a bullet against John Curtis, and they dodged a bullet against Rommel in a game that was suspended to the next day. But Acadiana came through the ranks, and they beat two fine teams to get there. And when they beat Carr, is exactly what I mentioned earlier. Sometimes you expend so much energy and emotion in a semifinal ball game when you get to this game. And I really think that happened to Acadiana because Catholic High's defense all year long has not been what they've been up to their own standards. Their offense was electric. They always have been good with the quarterback and the receivers that they have going to D1 schools and stuff like that. But I was not surprised. I was surprised at the score. Not surprised so much that Catholic won, but the score. But like I said, they really had a tough draw. Acadiana did, and going on the road like they had to, and beating Carr where they in their own home backyard. So that was a big win for them. And then I just don't know if that emotion was there after a short week. I mean, it went Friday to Friday. They certainly could have used an extra day. But give Catholic High credit for being state champions again.
Coach, you just kind of brought up multiple times about how so much energy can be spent and expended on getting your way to the Superdome or getting your way to the championship game. How do matchups play into your road to the Superdome, maybe more so than, say, a playoffs in college football would? Because we know how many different styles – I've said this before. I think the most difficult job in all of football is being a high school defensive coordinator. Just so many different types of offense you have to defend. So how much does maybe matchups play into the road to the finals more so than maybe any other level of football in high school?
I think it means a lot. The draw in high school is so important. And because that there is such thing, especially with the select and the public school side, select and non-select side now, you have a lot of weak football teams that enter only because it's watered down. It really is watered down. And because they get in there, so you might have an easier road. So you might beat a team easy in the first round and get the chance to play and rest some of your players. Second round might be the same thing. But you could get a tougher opponent, maybe the quarterfinals and the semifinals. You always will be playing somebody tougher. It does have a huge impact in high school. And again, I mentioned this before in this show. We won it one year 9-8 against a fine AME team. That's when everybody was together. But the semifinal game was basically, we used so much emotion in that ball game, taking the field goal to win it with no time left on the clock against a great Parkview Baptist team and Coach Guillot. But then you get to the Superdome, you expect it to play well, but it doesn't necessarily happen. I've seen it happen many times, even in every level. The team does not play up to par, and those upsets take place then. Because football, I really believe this, you only have so many big emotional games a year, and sometimes you can use it all. I remember one year we played Luttrell, number one in the state, and we played them game 6, and when Jarvis Lander was there, and we beat them. After that win, we were never the same football team. We were never the same football team. We didn't play up to that level the rest of the year because you can put so much emotion into that one game, and it comes from the media building up a game. It comes from the parents. It comes from the school, the community, the whole deal. It's no one's fault. It just that's what takes place in high school football.
Is there any way to limit that as a coach? I know we've kind of discussed this before. How do you try to evade that as a coach, that emotional drain, whether it's in the playoffs or whether it's in the regular season? What's your best attempt to try to get your kids to stay focused?
Well, I think that one of the things, you always build up the other team. I mean, whenever you're playing someone, you build them up. You say, all right, you always build up their good points. You don't talk about their weak points. You build up their good points. Okay, this is what this team can do best, and this is what we need to do to exploit that. And I think that's important, offensively, defensively, special teams. And if a team buys into that, and you must, most coaches say, well, playing level. In other words, what does that mean? Don't get too high, don't get too low. Just try to play level. But with the community, especially in high school, you live among your parents, your community. It's not like you live in a dormitory with them. You live with your parents, you live with the student body. You're there every day, and you see your kids every day, and that sort of thing. So there's a build up to every ball game in the community. In River Parish, for instance, these guys that work in the plants, they talk about football. It's all year in the spring ball too. They talk about football and they talk about who's playing what, so that's that they tease one another when they're playing one another. So all that is part of the big rivalries, and you can't prevent some of the big emotions from taking place in some ball game, but you try as a coach to get your team to play level and play well each week. But we all know that doesn't happen. We all have good days and bad days.
All right, thank you, Coach. And let's go ahead and take a look at some of these college football matchups. We know with bowl season right around the corner, we have two local teams who are going to be playing in bowl games, and that'll be Tulane taking on Virginia Tech. But, Coach, this unique situation that Tulane is in with Coach Fritz leaving, you now have a makeshift staff, most of which these guys are going to be headed off to Houston soon. You have players who may be debating trying to join him or going in the portal. So what do you expect to see from this Tulane ball club, and how difficult is it going to be for them to go and try to pull this win off of a Virginia Tech team that honestly full-strength Tulane probably should beat?
But I think that this bowl game is early enough where Coach Nago is going to run the program. He's the interim coach. He knows how to call the plays. He's done that for the last 2 years. And I think that, Coach Shields on the other side, I think they'll do a fine job. They know what their future is. They're professionals. They know what their contract says, that they'll stay there through the bowl game, and then after that they'll move on. They'll go with Coach Fritz at Houston. But I think you can see the team compete. Virginia Tech is a very, very good opponent. It's not a home game for them, but they're not playing far from home compared to Tulane. But I think it'd be a nice way to celebrate that Tulane's fine year. And you hate to see all this movement right now this time of the year, and I think that's something we'll talk about later on. But I do think that the Tulane will compete. Now, are they good enough to beat Virginia Tech? I said earlier, this is not the team of the past. One of the guys already joined, the best receivers already gotten into the portal. So it remains to be seen who's out there and what kind of success they will have.
All right, Coach. And our next matchup, we have LSU is going to be taking on Wisconsin. in the Rely Quest Bowl, I think it is. I don't even know. We're going to have a discussion about bowl games later on, Coach. But you know, when I look at this matchup, this is not a game I'm as a fan I'm super excited to see. I do think Wisconsin has a pretty scrappy ball club, but again, I don't know who draws up these matchups. But again, I feel like there's better matchups out there. But I do think LSU has a lot of questions. Who is going to play? Jaden Daniels wins the Heisman, which we didn't really get a chance to talk about. But congratulations to that young man. He definitely earned it. But is it really likely he's going to go play in that game? So who's going to be on the field for LSU, and how much drive do they have in this ball game after this season kind of comes into question here?
I think there's no way that Daniels plays. I mean, everybody loved to see him. I mean, he's a phenomenal athlete. LSU would have been a 500 team without him. He deserved the Heisman, as you said, Jason. But I think Jalen needs to sit down with his Coach Kelly and said, listen, Coach Kelly said, listen, I need to get my quarterback ready for next year. You really need to move on and, get ready for the pros and the draft and stuff like that. Let me see what Nussmeier can do or anybody else for that matter, even the new guy transferring in right now. But the bottom line, I think it's important that a new quarterback plays for LSU in that bowl game, so if not anything else, to evaluate him and say, well, he's good enough to win with next year, or maybe not. Maybe we need to look stronger in the portal. So I think that's an evaluation process as far as LSU is concerned, and some of the guys that they now have. That might be a tough conversation by Coach Kelly after this, and say that, you really need to be in the portal, young man, because you're not good enough to play for me, and that sort of thing. The portal, a lot of people think, well, they're just leaving, but I think these discussions have already been had by the coaches with some of these guys, and they've been told how the cow eats the cabbage. Said, listen, you probably need to find somewhere else to play.
Because we've discussed the transfer portal and the negative impact it has on football programs and how difficult it is, especially when a coach leaves. The possibility that half your squad or more than half your squad can walk away. But what do you think about the flip side of that, as you just mentioned? The idea that a coach can say, look, you may want to enter the portal. What do you feel about coaches kind of pushing players towards the portal to bring in fresh blood, maybe from the portal or from the high school ranks?
Well, it becomes just like the NFL. What the portal is done for you, it becomes just like free agency. In other words, listen, I'm turning you loose so you can go somewhere else because you're not good enough for me. With 85 scholarships, rather than just saying I'm cutting the kid, and because no coach wants to do that, and I'll tell you why. If I cut a player and from a certain high school, I don't want to go back to the high school because I got to explain to the high school coach, hey, I cut one of your former players. Well, nobody wants to do that on the college level, so they're very sensitive about that. And so what normally happens, I'll have the conversation with the guy. Said, listen, in a real discreet way, said, listen, you really need to look somewhere else to play linebacker, play cornerback. You can get a better chance to play in another division or maybe somewhere else, and I'll try to help you with that. So that's the big difference there. So the portal is not always a negative thing for that program. Sometimes a positive thing. It creates space where I can earn and get another scholarship guy in here.
All right, Coach, when you take a look at the playoffs, we've made discussions about the best four, the deserving four, however you want to look at it or discuss it. But we're going to go ahead and just talk matchups right now. You have Washington, who's going to be taking on Texas. Coach, Washington is a team you were really high on early on, and you kind of cooled off on as time went on, but had a lot of tough ball games. Texas took that loss to Oklahoma, but has really been a consistent team. Double-digit road victory against Alabama that you predicted, by the way. What do you see happening in this matchup, and who do you like?
I tell you, I think Texas looks like the team that's probably stronger right now this time of year. But don't count on Washington. Those wins against Oregon were huge, especially that last one. Penix loves to throw deep. Their offensive coordinator, who I love, he's got a plan that's a little bit different from a lot of guys. They will stretch the field vertically. So I think, even though Washington's defense is very, very suspect, but I really think they're going to rise to the occasion. And I see Washington really bombing that secondary for Texas.
So you're going Washington?
Yep.
Oh, I'm going the other way. I like the. I'm not going to speak good of Texas, but I will say I do think Texas will win this game. I think Texas has again really improved under Coach Sarkisian, and again, I'm surprised we're having this conversation this year, a year away from going to the SEC. Them joining the SEC, but here we are. And hats off to them for again, getting to this point. But let's go ahead and take a look at our next matchup. We have Michigan taking on Alabama, the 1-4 matchup. I don't know if you watched the announcement show. I'm assuming you did, but there was a moment, right, when you see Michigan's reaction to them announcing or getting announced that they were playing Alabama, and it was a gasp. It was hands on the head, and fans will play it off and say, well, that's because they couldn't believe that Florida State didn't make it. I think we are all very well aware of why they were afraid or why they looked like there was fear, and that's why I think Alabama's going to win this game, Coach. I mean, I think you have Coach Saban on one side of the field, and how much do you think Coach Harbaugh not being on the field the sideline the entire year could come into affect this game?
I really believe Michigan has the better team. Alabama found a little stride there, and they were lucky to beat Auburn. I think it was more Auburn giving the game away than anything else. They were lucky there. We talk about the South Florida thing. They got beat at home by two scores by Texas, and but their quarterback has gotten better. And LSU's defense made him think that he's a runner now. And ever since that ball game, of course, you and I could have run against LSU's defense, but ever since that ball game, he's really turned out to be a dual threat guy. But I don't think there's enough in his arsenal. I don't think their offense is nearly as explosive as it used to be. Their defense will be consistent, but I think Michigan can run the football, and I think they'll be more physical up front than some of the Alabama team. I really believe this. A lot of people don't agree with this. I think the SEC this year was down. I don't think it was the typical SEC. Nobody played great defense in the SEC this year, so I'm going with Michigan in this ball game.
Coach, you said LSU's defense, man. Yeah, we could run on them. Coach, I ran a 6 flat 40, 8 or wind aided. So I don't know about all that.
But you always fell forward or fell in your face anyway.
Yeah. I do think the one big factor, Coach, and I'll say this all the time, is you give Nick Saban a month and he'll find a way. I don't know how he does it, but he's failed in these situations before, but very rarely. So I think it's going to be a great ball game, a great Final Four. But there's another matchup that we have to discuss, and I think there's a lot of this when you talk about motivation and what goes into a game. Georgia taking on Florida State, Coach. What both of these teams. Georgia was the number one team coming into the country, and you dropped them 5 spots. Florida State is a team that did everything they were asked to do, scheduled 2 difficult games against SEC opponents on the road, or Florida turned out not to be. Right, but it's the effort to me that should come into effect as well. But did everything they were asked to do. So who's going to be playing in the game first of all, in a game that they might deem is not really important, and what teams are going to show up? What's the motivating factor?
That's the thing about bowl games. Do you put any money on games like this because you don't know who is going to be there? I would think both these teams have a chip in their shoulder. Florida State wants to prove that. Wait a minute now, if I win this ball game. When the final polls come out, I should be maybe at least second when the final polls come out. So they want to beat Georgia and also beat a SEC school, so that they could. That's bragging rights for them. I'm sure they'll make hats and T-shirts to that effect. On the flip side, Georgia's going to sit here and say, "Wait a minute, I want a commanding victory against Florida State, and I'm going to show the panel that they blew it. They made a mistake by kicking us out of this thing." So I think both these teams go in with a chip on the shoulder. This could be a war. If everybody plays like they're supposed to. So that would be a fun game to watch.
And it should be, again, that game is before the playoff games on December 30th. I do like how we have some of these bigger matchups that aren't just, piled up on one day, even though it is fun to have. I don't know about you, Coach. I loved having 5 TVs out, watching all the games at once. I thought it was like I was 10 years old. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world.
And a lot of nachos. That. Yeah, 5 TVs and a lot of nachos. That's about 2 bags right there.
Well, Coach, you got all day to eat, right? That's what New Year's is for.
Amen.
So let's go ahead and take a look at the New Orleans Saints. Coach, they got a win. That's the highlight, the talking point. It wasn't the prettiest win, 28-6 over the Panthers. But again, you had some issues with quarterback and receivers. You had offensive linemen arguing with your quarterback. You do have to take the positive, but what do you take away from this game? What is the solution here? We've continued to ask this question every week, but what is the solution for this ball club?
Number one, their special teams are excellent. They got a block punt for a touchdown, and this guy does a great job. And they always have been. They've always been really good on special team. When Peyton was there, but I think Carr throws a nice ball, but I'd like to see him go deeper. I like to see him not only just the vertical routes, run the deeper crossing routes or the deep in digs, which is an in route, what people call the in, or maybe even the deep outs. But by doing that, you have to have time. And I see that offensive linemen getting beat constantly, whether it's the tackles or the guard. And he's got a lot of pressure. There's push in the middle, and when there's push in the middle, quarterback cannot step up in the so-called cup. So and the defense is they're not playing nearly as hard as they did at one time. So that when people start throwing stones at people, it's just not one player. I know the quarterback is the face of the whole football team, whether it's the offense or whatever. He's the face of it, and if he goes bad, he gets all the blame for it. I understand because it's a passing league. It is that. But yet on the flip side of it, I thought that Kamara ran hard. We'd like to see him, run the option routes out of the backfield like they did with Sproles and people like that, and because that's hard to defend against anybody. But yet on the flip side, I would like to see more vertical passing, deeper routes by him, because Carr can throw those routes. But again, it's all encompassed with the protection. It starts with the protection. It all starts with that.
Before we go, Coach, this is our last episode of the season. So quick thought. Do you think the Saints should take a quarterback in this draft class?
I certainly do. No question. I think they will. I think they'll do that, and probably look at some receivers there. I think there's some dead weight on their team that they really need to go back and analyze it and say, hey, this guy. I think with everybody. I know Peyton was really, really, really firm on this. He wants a clean locker room, and right now I don't know if it is. I mean, there's some guys they're not getting on the field. Why? I don't know. And I mean, these undisclosed injuries, I don't know what that means in terms of that. But you definitely need a clean locker room where everybody's pulling together and they want to compete. And that's the thing we talked about, before. I mean, I really think that we're paying some of these people a lot of money, but they're not on the field or the court. So that's something that must be done before you can get compensation.
All right, thank you, Coach. And that'll do it for our first segment. We want to once again thank our title sponsor, Accardo and Dufresne Law Firm, your go-to River Parish lawyers. We'll be back after the break. Samuel Accardo Jr. and Henri P. Dufresne, your go-to River Parish lawyers. Experience, tenacity, and results. Sammy Accardo and Henri Dufresne provide comprehensive legal services in personal injury, hurricane claims, business litigation, successions, and estate planning. Our trial experience, know-how, and commitment to protect and serve our clients is unparalleled. We provide complete real estate, title, and escrow services through our affiliate, State Title LLC. The River Parishes is our home, and serving our communities is our passion. Based out of Gramercy, Louisiana, LSR produces Southern cane, pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. LSR utilizes the latest innovations in technology, as well as ensuring the growth and stability of Louisiana's sugarcane farmers by integrating more than 800 growers in the industry's economic structure. Southern cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets.
Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen.
We want to welcome our special guest tonight who played running back for Tulane from 1979 to 1982, none other than Reggie Reginelli. Reggie, thank you so much for joining us. And I got to ask, what was it like to play for Coach Monica at Tulane?
I didn't.
Be careful. Be careful, Reggie.
I loved it. Look, I actually had not met Coach Monica until I started over at Tulane, even though he's legendary in high school ranks before that. My father was a coach. He coached me at Newman, but Frank was at AAA Lutcher at the time, and we were AA. So I hadn't had the opportunity. But no, once I'll never forget, we met in the summer, and then started a camp in Covington. And I tell you what, as long as you listen and you do the right things, you're not going to have any problems with Frank.
Reggie, you go back and you had a phenomenal career over there at Newman High School, and because you were a phenom in the city, and everybody talked about this running back at Newman. A good friend of mine and yours also, Coach Vic Umont, said, Frank, you got to look at this running back and at Newman. I said, sure. So we got an opportunity to watch you play. We got an opportunity to watch with the old 16 millimeter film. And that you get to know your dad better. Coach Tony Reginelli, for those that don't know, is a very, very successful coach, and just one of the genuine good guys in the coaching profession, and is a true pro. And you guys, y'all had just a good program, Reggie. But your high school career was just. I just think it was an exclamation point when you came to Tulane. It was you were a big catch when you came to Tulane, and it was just a pleasure to have you there. But Reggie, when you first came in your freshman year, there were a lot of backs in that room, as you remember. There were 10 of you in that room, but you always found a way to get on the field, because you could do a lot of things. You could block, you were intelligent, you could catch the ball out of the backfield. And there was an old friend of ours who's recently passed, Lindy Infani, was just a tremendous offensive mind, and he really believed in you and tried to do a lot of things to get you the ball. Do you remember those days?
Oh, absolutely. Lindy, man, what an innovator, huh? I know Frank and I, we would talk about it all the time. I felt like I was sitting in a meeting at like GE with the CEO over there. He was that professional and that polished. He was so far ahead of all the other offensive minds at the time, and he would explain it so well to everybody. He'd say, "This is why we're doing this. This is why you're going to do that," and he had everybody on board. So yeah, it was Frank. We were lucky. We walked in a pretty good situation at Tulane that first year.
Yeah, but the thing that you brought to the table, Reg, you sort of a Tulane Christian McCaffrey, because there's many things you can do. You can catch punch, you can get kickoffs. And even though some people say, well, you didn't have the blinding speed, no, but you were fast enough. The first guy, you always did make miss, and you held on to the football. And you fell forward. That's one thing that running back coaches love. They see a back that likes to go forward. And offensive lines coaches love guys that run the hole and not try to bounce it and stuff like that. But Coach, so one of your big memories that when you first, our first year there together, we went to the Liberty Bowl and I played Penn State. Do you remember that night, 1979, Penn State and Joe Paterno in Liberty Bowl?
Do. That was a good ball club. They remember, Coach, the year before they were playing in the Sugar Bowl for the national championship, and we played them the following year. And wow, what a defense they had. They were tough. They were tough. We didn't have a lot of success moving the ball that day, but we should have won the darn game. We had a shot, and if I remember, we lost at 9-6.
9-6 on the halfback pass. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they kicked the field goal in the last few seconds of the game. But boy, that was, I know Tulane, they're excited now about playing in the January bowl games and stuff. But back then, man, you get to play Penn State. That's the real deal back then.
Yeah, Reg, let me mention a couple of guys that were on that team. Bruce Clark was on that team. Millen, I don't know if you remember him. Yeah, was Millen on that team. Kurt Warner was the running back. Todd Blacklist was the quarterback. Russell was the All-American guard, and Matt Kubin was also on that team, to mention some others. So they had several All-Americans on that football team.
I'll never forget it. Larry Kubin, I think his knee is still imprinted in my head right now. His knee hit my helmet, and oh my God, my bell was rung pretty good. But they had an amazing team.
Yeah, Reggie, you remember the story? I mean, we stayed at the hotel with all the Ducks, the Peabody, I think it's called.
Right,
and,
right.
Coach Larry Smith had given the team unlimited curfew that night. Said, you have no curfew the first night. After this, we get back down to business. Well, all of a sudden, about 12 o'clock, all of you came walking into the lobby. And I remember walking up to Chuck Pitcock, who was probably the team clown and a spokesman. I said, Chuck, why are you guys in? He said, Coach, did you see the size of those guys? He said, we're going to bed. We're going to rest up. I don't know if you remember that time right there. But
they were big. They were very.
We can't let the night go without talking about that 1982 night in Tiger Stadium. When in fact, if I recall, I think it was 79 beat choice that you caught the ball out of the backfield. And you outran the whole secondary. Do you remember that night?
I do. I'll never forget it. You're right. It was a B choice route, and which, if you recall, Coach, that week leading up to it, we knew they were going to be blitzing us a lot, and so we put those packages together just for that situation, and we ran that several times during the game, and had a lot of success with it, and then. On that fourth down, I think it was 4th and 3 from about 34. Y'all made that call, and I knew I had to get. I mean, as soon as the ball was snapped, I saw him coming. I knew I had to get out in the flat as quick as I could. And I was fortunate. You say I outran. I'm not sure how I got past James Britt. He ended up playing in the NFL for quite a few years, and Lifford Hobley was out there too, I think. But I mean, their defense was unbelievable, and we were just fortunate. Mike McKay, our quarterback, he was expecting the blitz as well, and we threw it, and I was able to stay in bounds on the sidelines and tight roped it all the way to the end zone.
Reggie, you were very fortunate. Mike McKay, and I tell people this all the time. He really did not have a strong arm. I don't know if he could throw a football 40 yards, but somehow or another, he could get the ball to receivers. That night, LSU blitzed us 27 times. Now, I'm not just talking about backer blitz. I'm talking about safety blitzes and even corner blitzes. They blitzed us 27 times that night.
Oh, yeah. From all over, you're right. Linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties. I mean, it was – and that – But Coach, if you remember, that's why they were so successful that year. They had done that the whole season, and there was only one team that had beaten them with that same blitz package was Tennessee. And if you remember, Coach, we looked at that film all week, the Tennessee game, about what Tennessee did to respond to their blitz packages, and It worked to perfection. We had a lot of success that night. We had some long drives that night.
No question. And I remember, very, very well, Coach, how we responded in that ball game. Reggie, you and I were both our first 4 years together at Tulane. We had beaten LSU 3 out of 4 years. And Vince was responsible for 2 of those, and Coach Larry Smith was for the first one. But that was pretty good times, and we thought this college ball was pretty much fun.
Oh. It was those 4 years I would never change. It was great, Coach. I love playing for you. I mean, you were fair, you were tough, but you were I wasn't kidding earlier. I said as long as you listen and you implemented what you told us to do, we were going to have no problems. It's when you screw up and you act like a knucklehead that you deserve to get yelled at or put on the sidelines a little bit. So, I mean, you just had to listen and execute. That's what it's all about.
Well, we had a couple of guys in that room that they fall in that knucklehead category, as you remember. I'm sure you remember. Reggie, you became a very successful lawyer. Now you're an entrepreneur of the city. But tell everybody exactly what you're up to right now.
Well, I did. I practiced law for a while, and then my brother and I, we started Reginelli's Pizzeria, and we have 6 locations around the city. And so I've actually backed away from practicing law, and I liked renovating and flipping houses, and some of them we keep with some apartments. So between the restaurants and that, I've been fortunate, and I got to spend a little more time with my kids. So I'm out. I'm not practicing law anymore, and haven't done so for a number of years now. But it's all worked out, and I'm happy, and got 2 great kids, so everything's good. And I know how much family means to you, Coach, and that's the way I feel too. I've any minute I can get to spend with my kids, I do it.
Yeah. Before I forget it, do you remember the Thanksgivings that used to come over the house, and the guy would land a helicopter and next to the field and come pep you guys up?
That's right. Yeah, Coach, you were good at trying to get us excited or providing some entertainment to get us motivated. But yeah, it was always something.
Yeah. He was a character. He since passed, and he had to get special permission. I don't know if he ever did. He told me he did to land that helicopter there, but I don't know. Reggie, switch a little bit. What's your take now about what's going on either in the transfer portal on NIL? You and I talked on the phone a little bit about this, but what's your take about what's going on, especially now with the college guys and NFL guys?
Yeah, Coach, I'm really kind of conflicted with that because. I'm happy for the players to get a little money in their pocket. I know how important that is when you're young to be able to, take a girl out to dinner, just feel a little bit better about, especially if you're from out of state and you're at a school where you're not real familiar with surroundings at all. It helps. I'm also concerned though that, there's no rules. It's like the Wild West out there right now. And some of the big schools, they can pay whatever they want to these kids. And as a result of that, I'm afraid that the haves and the have-nots are going to get further and further apart. I really am. And I think we've talked before. I think ultimately, I don't know why the NCAA even exists at this point in time. I think the big power conferences, I can see them just breaking off and starting their own league one day and commanding even 2 and 3 times more of the TV revenue than what they're getting right now.
Yeah, I can see the college education going out of the window, and it'll be like a semi-pro, basically like baseball does. There's nothing wrong with it if they go that route. Student athlete, really a student athlete.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was watching College Game Day this past Saturday, and Pat McAfee was on, and he was talking to one of the other hosts for that show, and they were talking about the transfer portal and how it starts on December 4th and ends, I think, at January 3, and McAfee, and it's during the bowl season, and that's creating a little bit of problem because some kids are getting into the portal, they don't know whether they should play in the bowl game or not for the team. And it's a mess. And McAfee chimes in and he says, well, I just don't understand why they just don't push this portal deadline back to end of January or February when teams have done with the bowl games and they can move on and then the players can figure out where they really want to go.
Exactly.
And what's funny, Coach, is they had a little expert there talking about the portal. And he tells McAfee, he says, well, Pat, there's this little thing called school. And the players, they got to start school in January. So if you're going to transfer, a lot of times you got to be at the school before the semester starts. And McAfee looked at him and he goes, oh, yeah, school. Forgot about school. And that's the point. That's the point now, is that a lot of the players are forgetting about school too. It's all about the money now.
Exactly. I mean, you just look what's happening all over in the paper today. There's an article in the paper, and it talked about how the NCAA is now they're pushing this idea of every player, even girls, getting $30,000 a year.
I saw
even
that.
girls, and I mean that's really ridiculous. I don't know. Again, I think that if they're going to do that, if they pay players that early in life, let's make a semi-pro team, and let's not call them student athletes whatsoever. Reggie, a couple other things, and we'll let you go. The pro model today in the NFL, and let's compare offenses about when you played offenses and offenses now in the pro model as far as offense is concerned. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's actually very little comparison to when, for most offenses, when we played back in the late 70s and 80s. I mean, it's like night and day now. But you get back to Lindy and Fonte. If anybody was as advanced that looked similar to what they do nowadays, it was probably our offenses, because we were remember, Coach, we were using one back offenses a lot,
and four wide receivers.
When most people still had two running backs and at least, and so we were pretty far ahead of the game back then, and we were wide open. But nowadays, the running back has just become, like with the salaries, they're just not as valuable. They just don't get used as much. So the game's changed tremendously. It's a one-on-one game now. It drives me crazy, Coach, when they get down to the 5-yard line and in, and all they want to do is throw that fade route to the receiver on the outside. Like, that's a high percentage play. I just don't get that. That's what they do now, though. It's all they pick on the best one-on-one situations, and they just throw it up and see if your guy's better than the other guy.
Right. They didn't know. You and I both worked with a guy by the name of Lyndon Fine, as you mentioned. I remember going in, he would stay in, sometimes sleep in the office till 1 or 2 in the morning. And he had these big old yellow legal pads. And every morning he said, "Come here, Frank." He'd have 4 or 5 new plays every day. 4 or 5 new plays. We had a catalog of every day. I said, "What's this?" I mean, Lindy, I said, this is now, I think one of the big mistakes Tulane made in their future, and I've said this, that when Lindy was not picked to come back to Tulane to be the head coach. And that was a big time, I think, a big mistake in the history of Tulane athletics as far as football was concerned.
Yeah. Look, I love Vince Gibson, but I mean, Lindy was there for a number of years, and he was, Coach, I put him in the category of every bit as good as Bill Walsh and Sid Gilman, the true offensive gurus at that time. He was just as good as them. If you look at his track record, what he did even after he left Tulane, he led the Browns to the championship, the Bengals to the Super Bowl. He was that good. And, it certainly, you and I being offensive minded, we would have loved to have continued playing in that type of offense. And Vince didn't quite, he was more conservative and wanted to run the ball a lot more. And right. So it changed a lot once Larry Smith and Lindy left. It changed a little bit of the trajectory of our program, I think.
No question. One quick story, Reggie, before we leave. I remember, I don't know if it was Lindy's idea or Rock's idea. Rock Hunters was our quarterback, and Rock was known. People thought he was fast, but you would know Rock was maybe 4'8", 4'9". But they would cut. Back in those days, we had the tearaway jerseys. You remember that? You had to have about 4 or 5 of those tearaway jerseys. Right. I wish they would still have them now.
Yeah.
But they would cut his sleeves on his jersey, so when he ran, he'd look faster, and everybody on tape, it made him look like he was a fast guy. I don't know if you remember that or not, but
I do. But it's funny, Rock. He might not have been the fastest, but I tell you what, he could run the ball when we needed him to do it.
No question. He was so smart. He had the quickest release, and that's what made him so effective and made him an All-American at Tulane. Reggie, listen, I can't thank you enough for taking your time. I know you got your 5 miles to walk in the morning with David. Does David really keep up with you? Or does he ride in the car?
He's with me all the way. Absolutely.
Well, But listen, he still owes me a lunch. I think it's been 5 years now that he owes me a lunch. Okay, so he said, I'm gonna call you one day for lunch.
We're gonna get with you before. Well, man, I don't know about the new year, but right after the new year.
Okay, well, tell him I'm saving my green stamp because I'll pay for it. It's okay. Reggie, thank you so much. And listen, have a great Christmas, and thanks for taking your time to be with us tonight.
Oh, I loved it, Coach. And hope you and your wife have a great Christmas as well.
Thank you so much.
We'd like to once again thank Reggie Reginelli for joining us on the Let's Be Frank Video Podcast. We'd also like to thank LSR for being a sponsor for our show. LSR produces Southern Cane, pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. Southern Cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets. Samuel Liccardo Jr. and Henri P. Dufresne, your go-to River Parish lawyers. Experience, tenacity, and results. Sammy Accardo and Henri Dufresne provide comprehensive legal services in personal injury, hurricane claims, business litigation, successions, and estate planning. Our trial experience, know-how, and commitment to protect and serve our clients is unparalleled. We provide complete real estate, title, and escrow services through our affiliate, State Title LLC. The River Parishes is our home, and serving our communities is our passion. Based out of Gramercy, Louisiana, LSR produces Southern Cane, pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. LSR utilizes the latest innovations in technology, as well as ensuring the growth and stability of Louisiana sugarcane farmers by integrating more than 800 growers in the industry's economic structure. Southern Cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets.
Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen.
Welcome back to the Let's Be Frank Video Podcast, and this is our third and final segment, and we'd like to thank our sponsor, Riverlands Insurance, for being a part of our show. Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. So, Coach, today on the Let's Be Frank segment presented by ULCS, you are going to discuss coaching turnover. So, Coach, take it away.
Guys, what I really want to talk about and kind of explain to everybody our lame duck staff. In other words, when all of a sudden when the coach leaves and he goes to another program, the head coach leaves, well, these assistants become like lame ducks. If the head coach does not take them to his new job, then all of a sudden they're sitting there. For instance, you got coaches in limbo. And so what's the benefit of this from the school and the coach's standpoint? Are those coaches on that staff now that are lame ducks, even though they're coaching in the bowl game, for instance, or if they're not coaching the bowl game, they're sitting there. Are they going to recruit hard? Unless somebody told them, wait a minute, you got a next year contract and you're going to be here, are they going to coach hard? Are they going to recruit hard? Or are they just going to try to find their new job? Most of them would not be professional enough to say, well, I'm going to coach my buns off and I'm going to recruit hard just like I'm here. But when it comes to watching game tape, am I going to dig? Am I going to grind to get my team ready for this bowl game if I know that I might not even have a job? So that limbo era, that lame duck status right there is really taxing on the coach. He's got to feed his family. So if he doesn't know what he's going to be coaching next year or where he's going to be coaching, and he's not going to coach the exact same way. He's going to explain to people, wait a minute, I got all of these recruits that I've been recruiting all year long, maybe for a couple of years now. And he said, but if I leave, who's going to take over these guys? So he's going to get on the phone to try to find his new job, Or is he going to just say, well, I'll take care of that later? Well, he can't worry about that later because he's got to feed that family. So the lame duck coach is just kind of sitting. And the reason why I can talk about this, it happened to me on 2 occasions when I was at Tulane University. And I know it's really traumatic because you really don't know where your next job is going to come from. In one particular time that we were guaranteed a 1-year extension and that we could stay there for at least 1 more year. But there was no guarantee that the coach would keep you after that particular time. So your priorities will really be for your own family. So hopefully that you have a decent contract. Now, that's another thing. Let's talk about that. When a coach is terminated, the head coach is terminated, or let's suppose he gets another job, when he moves on, those assistant coaches, most of them do not have long-term contracts. The assistant coach, maybe a coordinator might, but some of these contracts will only go maybe till March. Some might be nice enough to go all the way to June. And I know that when Grant Teff was in charge of the Football Coach Association, he pushed hard to have contracts for assistant coaches go all the way to June. So that means if a guy got fired in December, he had all the way to June to at least find another job, and he had payment to feed his family. So that was important from the coach's standpoint. So and I always remember this, even in normal life, in everyday activities, it's a lot easier to find a job when you have one. When you don't have a job, that phone doesn't ring that often. And when you do try to call someone, they say, well, they look at you totally different. So, well, this guy's calling, begging me for a job to try to help him. So that's not easy. And for the player standpoint, they don't know exactly where they stand. Everybody's in limbo there. They don't know they're there for an education, but from their standpoint, they don't know where they will start. They don't know where they join the portal. They're going to start all over next year. And what's going to happen with my NIL thing? What's going to happen with my NIL thing? This other coach gave me all this money, but what's going to happen? Am I under contract? No one talks about the NIL deals when that happens. And if a guy does transfer, what happens to the NIL thing? I don't know. And whatever happened to the loyalty? The loyalty said, even in the players, from the player standpoint, whatever happened, nobody wanted you, son. I recruited you. Now all of a sudden you think you're better than what you are and you want to go transfer a portal. So there's a lot of things to talk about when people are in limbo like that, And then from the fan standpoint, you have the issue about the fans love the process of finding someone new. They love it. They love the process of that. Hey, I'm excited about a new coach, blah, blah, blah. And, new guy, hey, let him go. And then all of a sudden, that honeymoon is over quickly, though, when you find out, well, how good is this guy? So he has about a year to prove that he can prove himself as a recruiter, also prove himself as a promoter, and also, more importantly, as a good coach that will win football games. So, when it comes to the coaching turnover, there's a lot of issues behind the scenes that people don't see. And most of all, it's that lame duck staff that don't know their future, the players that don't know their future, and the fans don't really know what to expect and what they're getting. So be careful what you pray for because you might get it.
All right, Coach, we're going to go ahead and talk about our next topic in the Blitz the Ball Coach segment. And, Coach, the question for this week is, are bowl games now legitimate?
Yeah, exactly. Right now, what's happened with the bowl games, it's actually a farce. Because, first of all, a lot of guys prefer, especially if they're senior, and especially if the NFL and NIL thing is going to be carried over to something else. Do I want to play in this game and get myself hurt and get ready for the NFL? Some people did. I remember when Devin White from LSU decided he was going to play in the bowl game, and I think he, in my mind, that guy deserved awful lot of credit and kudos to him. He's always going to be a hero in my eyes for what he did. Because nowadays it's the same. That should be mandatory. Somebody needs to step in and say either the NCAA or the bowl people need to put a criteria, a policy in place to protect the bowls. If we don't protect these bowls, they're going to do away with them, and the sponsors are going to start to leave. If the better players are not playing that bowl, the sponsors are going to start saying, "Wait, the heck with this! I'm not sponsoring you anymore because the best players." It's a watered down bowl that we're getting right now. It's not the same thing. So I want to see the personnel to be the same guys that got you here, not just anybody. So I really think that the bowls are not really as attractive. They're not as sexy as they once were because of people opting out. They're already in the transfer portal and things like this. The only thing that keeps them busy right now, and I will say this, is Vegas. And what do you mean by Vegas? The betting line. As long as they have a betting line on it, it will make it attractive and keep that going. But if Vegas have decided, wait a minute, there's no line on this ball game because I don't know who's going to play. It's more or less like a glorified high school, and they're trying to find out who's going to play next year. So the bowl game, in some cases, become like spring training, but it gives a chance to play somebody else. But it's so watered down, and I think that it's diluted. And from the standpoint, after the first four, it's being diluted only because people are opting out. So either NCAA has to get behind it, the bowls will get behind it, or even Congress, somebody needs to put in place and said, these are things you can't do until the bowl season's over with.
Thank you, Coach. And I agree with you. I think there's a lot of issues with bowl season as well. But one thing is, Coach, even from a base level standpoint, I don't know who's making these bowl games. I know the polls have something to do with it, but for all the reasons they kept out FSU, they put Liberty in, who had the dead last worst strength of schedule over SMU. You have Missouri taking on Ohio State, while you have Ole Miss playing Penn State. I feel like the point of the bowl games have been lost, and what used to be a really exciting thing to be doing on New Year's Day or whatever other days during bowl season has now become almost a chore of an obligation as a fan of football. Like, football's on, I guess I have to watch it. And I think the product is so watered down, and it's sad for me as a fan to be seeing what used to be such an incredible opportunity to see some of the best players in college football play. And now it's, I guess we have to pull this 5-7 team out the gutter to play in this bowl game. And it's disappointing. And you were talking earlier with Reggie Reginelli about how you played in that big bowl game against Penn State. I don't know if we'll ever get that opportunity to see bowl games that aren't playoff games matter like that again.
Exactly. Especially if some of the personnel, especially your quarterback. If your quarterback's not there, you're starting quarterback, then you go into a second or third guy. And then what do you expect? You're going to see a situation where it won't be a very exciting game. They're lucky to get a snap, so hopefully something will take place, and they're going to have to change next year when they go to 12. We'll see how that shakes out.
Coach, how much, you kind of talked about it earlier, how much do you think this now impacts coaches' mentality going into the game of, look, if we're going to move on from players and they're going to go into the portal anyway, let's get these new guys in. Let's give them some experience, some first team reps, because you know how much that bowl prep matters for your team the next season. Those 15 practices matter. How much does that kind of play into a coach's approach to the postseason and their bowl game?
I don't know how it's going to impact it, especially with the portal, and more importantly, you got lame duck coaches. You got guys that are not even on the staff coaching. Take, for instance, Tulane. The new guy's not going to coach the team, and I understand that. He has to step aside because, it's not his players yet. So you see that. So it's no continuity there. So who's the team belong to? You got they're in transition. You got the old staff, and then you got the transitional staff coming in. So it's a big mess. The bowl season is a big mess, and it's all created because of the transfer portal.
Thanks, Coach. And we're going to go ahead and give our socials and go ahead and give our final thoughts before we get out of here. But remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. At Facebook, it's the Let's Be Frank Video Podcast. X, Instagram, and TikTok, it's the LBF Podcast. Of course, we won't be having any more shows until next season, but we'll try to be posting some clips and some interview moments. Coach, season 2 under wraps. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, remember last week we talked about Otani. Otani just signed a $700 million deal. In fact, there are two programs, 2 Major League Baseball teams that's bigger than their entire budget. That's the Baltimore and Oakland. Isn't that unbelievable? And then John Rahm just signed one of the LIV deal, $600 million guaranteed. Guaranteed. He doesn't even have to win. Guaranteed. All he has to show up and with his putter. And that's about it. So, but I would like to just wish everybody a great Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and just God bless all of you.
Coach, I don't need the whole cookie. Just give me a crumb, like 0.0001%. I think it's still $70,000. Look, just toss a poor school teacher some money. I'd be more than happy with that.
I would not have to
you
go
can relate.
I would not have to go through a drive-up window again. Thank God for that.
But again, season 2 under wraps, and I want to thank everybody first of all for watching the show, for being a part of our show. Whether you're asking questions, whether you're responding on social media. And Coach, I want to take a moment to talk to you about what we've done. We discussed doing this years ago, and it was just a conversation we'd have a few times a year. Hey, you really want to do this? And luckily enough, pitched the idea to VSN and Eric. And of course, my idea was much smaller because that's the way my brain works. And Eric is much bigger and bombastic. And we bring on Justin, who, again, Justin Thomas, our producer, has done a fantastic job, and appreciate all the hard work that he puts in behind the scenes. And again, doesn't get the credit. We're just the people talking. He has to push all the buttons, make all the graphics, and do all the hard work. But, Coach, I just want to say how much I appreciate being here with you. Not even just on the camera, but our weekly conversations. There's nothing more that I enjoy than being able to talk football with someone of your knowledge and your ability. And these 2 years have just been some of my favorites, being able to cover high school athletics, college, and professional. And again, I owe it to you, and not just in this, but you called me, you chose me, and I appreciate that. But also, I was a kid who, even dating back to St. Charles, I came from St. Peter's School. I was one of 7 kids in a class, and you gave me an opportunity to be a part of something bigger than myself. At St. Charles Catholic. And, again, I want to tell you, not only, look, you got Comet, Rebel, Bulldog, and Green Wave Nation, who are so proud to be able to say that, you are in the Hall of Fame, and, again, so deserving. And, again, I just wanted to give my fullest appreciation for everything that you've done for me over the years. And I appreciate it so much.
Chase, thank you so much, because you've been, you're a fire plug. You love this game. You love the game of football. You love doing what you're doing, and you're doing an excellent job. You got a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. Got to thank Justin behind the scenes over there. He's a pro. He even laughs at my joke. Even though he got the Lion King, the biggest cat in Utah, but he does a phenomenal job, and I'm really going to miss you guys for the rest of the year. And let's just hope and pray we can do this again next year, hopefully, that we all on this side of the earth.
Yeah, and look, we again, I think we've grown a lot from season 1 and 2, and again, we hope to be back with you guys again next season, and again season 3 with everything that we've had this year, and hopefully more. So I feel like we've grown a ton over the past year, whether it's the length of the show or the content we're bringing in. Again, I would expect just more in the future. So again, we want to thank everybody out there for watching. Again, like Coach said, we want to wish everybody a happy holidays during the season. And remember, let's lay bon temps, lay let the good times roll.
Good night, everybody. Merry Christmas.